All right, so going back to the structure of the paragraph. So you also want to always cite where you got your quotes. So you basically need to indicate where you found the quotation in the text. And typically in our upcoming paragraphs and essays, when you use just one literary work, we're all, let's say, quoting from The Most Dangerous Game or The Story Everyday Use, for example. You would just put a number in parentheses and your teacher will know what you mean by that one. So for instance, you would get the paragraph number from Actively Learned if quoting from The Most Dangerous Game. For the sample paragraph, you'll see page numbers given from the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. And if that's your only source that you're using, it's typical that we just put the page number in parentheses there. Once we start using multiple sources, like on a research paper, where you have a works cited page, we traditionally put the author's name and page number, like Lee 132. Now, where does the citation go? After the quotation, before the first logical pause. Now, typically, when you think about when you read aloud, that means before punctuation. So before the first comma after the quote, or before the first period after the quotation, like the first punctuation mark. I will show you an exception in a moment, but it's typically that. So you want to look to see, okay, where do I have punctuation after the quote, and that's where you put it. So if you look at these examples here, for my quotes, I ended up using two from two separate pages that were still dealing with the same context of where Scout was hearing these rumors. Now, what's unique about this, that does happen from time to time, is that I have two different quotes from two different pages. So how you handle that is to put that 13 immediately after the first quote. And then that 16 goes after the second quote. And you see how it's before the period. And I'll show you other citations as we go to help you see how it works. Typically, it would be like the number 16, where you have the quote, and instead of having the period inside the quotation mark, it is after the parenthetical notation or the citation. So you put that number 16 in parentheses, and then you put the period after it. All right. Now, looking at analysis. So after you've given a quotation, you cannot assume that that quote has proven your point. You need to give analysis. What we're looking for there is always follow the quotation by explaining how the quoted words prove the point in your topic sentence. So, with writers, I typically tell them, put your pencil down and pause a moment and go back and reread your topic sentence to remind yourself what you're trying to prove. Because I can't tell you how many times students forget what was in their topic sentence and they neglect to cover something that they should have covered. While the simple paragraph may contain only one sentence of analysis at times, because I'm pretty good at sentence combining, for example, do work on extending your analysis beyond one sentence. So make sure you analyze that quotation thoroughly before you go on to your next point. So think about, have you supported your claim in your topic sentence? Have you explained how that quote proves the claim? In your discussion, have you weaved in literary terms as you discuss the writer's techniques? One, certainly you want to talk about the terms that are in your topic sentence, but also it'll make you sound like you're more informed if you are discussing using the jargon of literary analysis. So when you're able to weave in literary terms, you're probably going to come up with a more insightful point than otherwise. Can you connect your points to the meaning of the work as a whole, to the thematic message? So theme, remember, that would be a message that we get about life. So, how does all of this work to reveal that message? So we want to do those three things every time after each quote. So again, looking at the sample paragraph, notice that we have, I've highlighted the literary terms. So we have unreliable narrator in yellow, epiphany in orange, external conflict in red. And then we have the claim in green and the theme in blue. And then with that first point in our context, I did actually weave in exposition, which was a nice move to, you know, again, use the jargon of literary analysis, even in the context. And then in the analysis, you see how we have at only 6 years old, Scout believes what Jem and others tell her as gospel and reports to the audience as truth, making her an unreliable narrator. There's ding, I've just brought in that one literary term from the topic sentence. 4, she lacks the critical thinking to question the claims and lacks the experience to understand why Boo would behave differently from others and thus face malignant gossip. All right, so ding, ding again, because I've woven into the conversation then the claim about her being childish and prejudiced in the beginning and lacking that ability to consider things from another point of view. Now, you want to repeat that process as needed. So you never want to have a one quote paragraph. Graders will see that as a poorly developed, unsupported paragraph. So 2 quotes are better than 1. 3 quotes are better than 2, and 4 quotes are better than 3. So think about that. For our paragraph writing this quarter, definitely shoot more toward 4 quotes than 2 for sure. 2, you're going to be losing points on your paragraph because it is poorly supported. Okay. So find whatever quotes you can, and then you want to repeat the process: context, quotation, citation, analysis for all of those quotes. So as we're looking at, when I'm grading you, I'm looking for, are you thorough? Are you doing the formula? All right, so as we look at the sample paragraph, I used ellipses to cut the first quote, but now let's go on to our next one. So we have context. While Boo's putting a blanket around Scout during Miss Monty's fire and is giving the children's gifts would suggest that he is a gentler, kinder individual than the gossips portray. Scout does not come to full realization until the night that Boo saves the children's lives, and she knows that, quote, Mr. Tate was right to hide who killed Bob Ewell. Sorry for my misspeaking, but there we have our context. Now we have our quote, Mr. Tate was right, and we have a citation. Notice where the citation is located, and that is because there wasn't a pause after right. There was no punctuation until the period at the end of the sentence. So that is why I put the 370 in parentheses there. And then we have our analysis. Now she has an epiphany, as Atticus does, that they have Boo to thank in the conflict, and considering the situation from Boo's perspective, the best way to thank him does not involve taking him into the limelight and promoting his good deed. Now, another way of looking at it is with, okay, am I, pulling in the elements of the topic sentence? And honestly, when I'm grading you, keep in mind, I will be checking your analysis with your topic sentence. So I'm basically doing what I'm doing right here. So I'm looking to see, oh, you pulled in epiphany. That was in your topic sentence in orange there. Awesome. Oh, look, you mentioned conflict. That was in your topic sentence. Very good. And considering the situation from Boo's perspective, I can see that as both showing some insightful understanding and it's weaving in the theme a bit there. So nice job on your analysis. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm grading you. Now, as we go into our next quote, again, we need context, walking Boo home in the resolution. Scout recalls the times that, okay, that should be enough context for those who've read the novel to remember, oh yeah, that's that last chapter, got it. And that is enough to give us a sense of, where is this quote coming from, this Boo's children needed him quote coming from. And I combine that quote with also the Atticus was right. You never really know a man until you stand in his shoes and walk around in them, which was on page 374. Now, because those 2 separate quotes come from page 374, it was fine to put simply the 374 in parentheses before that comma there. And then we have our analysis, which Scout practically does standing on his porch. That moment allows Scout to consider his perspective and realize Boo has never been the malevolent phantom as portrayed by the gossip mongers, transitioning her portrayal to a more reliable narration in the end. And again, looking at it with the color coding, I'm as a grader, I'd be looking at, okay, so you're addressing perspective in blue there. All right, that's in your topic sentence. And the part about realizing Boo had never been a malevolent phantom. Okay, that shows that insightful understanding, and that pulls in that unreliable narrator. Now she's actually reliable at the end. That's good as well too. It's weaving in that term. So we've done term, the claim, and the theme in the analysis, which is what I want to see every single time. Now that brings us to our next quote. Context. Scout's final insight occurs as she is almost asleep and relating the story of the gray ghost, but the parallels suggest she really discusses Boo and how, and this quote. Again, remember we went literary present tense, so that's why I say discusses instead of discussed. The quote, he hadn't done any of those things. He was real nice. And note again, the citation goes before the period there. And then we have analysis. While a father's reading to his daughter may evoke childhood memories, Scout's comments show a growth in her as a dynamic character, realizing in a sleepy epiphany that Arthur Radley deserved none of the negative gossip and all of the appreciation as a good human being. An epiphany learned through taking the time to examine the world through his perspective. Again, why is that a strong analysis? We have the use of the term dynamic character. We have the word epiphany, which comes from the topic sentence. We have, and that's on there twice. And then we have that pulling in the theme as well, taking the time to examine the world through his perspective. Now, a dynamic character means that the character has changed over time. So I consider that a reference to her changing from childish and prejudiced to an insightful understanding. So that would count for me there. So again, good analysis going in that last quote. So as you look at that sample paragraph so far, I just shared that pattern where it's continuing to go back to that topic sentence and pulling in the terms, the claim, and the theme wherever you can after every single quote. And making yourself go back to your topic sentence and double checking, am I covering all those things, will help you have a full analysis. And sometimes I may be able to sentence combine and make it only one sentence of analysis, but many students will need to cover it in multiple sentences to be thorough. Now we're not done yet though with our paragraph, because you always want to end with a concluding sentence. Now, pet peeve of mine, do not give a summary. For your reader does not need a summary. I mean, I've just read the paragraph, so I know what it's about. I don't need you to summarize the point. It's kind of insulting in a way, like, Ms. Hainham, I know you haven't been paying attention, so let me summarize it for you. It ends up being weak at the end and undermining the strength of your paragraph if you end with just a summary. So the question becomes, okay, well then what do I write? Instead, you want to reflect on the significance of the issue. Discuss why this issue is important, how it relates to real life. Cover the so what. So imagine you have a smart aleck reader who's going like, so what? Why should I care? I mean, it's a fictional novel. Why should I care about Scout and Boo and how Scout grew up and understands people? How does that relate to my life? All right, and this is what I'm saying, connect it to real life. Talk about how it can apply. What lesson can we get from this? How does this pertain to real life that we can take with us having read your paragraph? So, I'll give you an example in a moment. Also, I want to mention, though, when you're doing essay writing as well, there's an additional thing you want to think about, and that is to start transitioning to your next paragraph. So when you're writing essays where you have a series of body paragraphs, you would reflect on the significance of the issue and then try to include some phrasing in there to transition to our next point in the next paragraph. But anyway, for this paragraph, here's an example. So in a world where accusations fly about classmates, neighbors, politicians, sometimes the best response involves a pause, reflection, and consideration of another person's point of view. Now notice here I'm not just like restating the theme right? Which is to develop empathy, people should take the time to consider things from other points of view. I mean, I do touch on the theme there, but I connected to our world and how people do make accusations, as you may have heard, like rumors about someone in your school. Certainly, I hear rumors about politicians because I'm into politics. But, maybe we all need to kind of check ourselves and not believe everything. And we should maybe take the time to learn more about that person before we judge. So, because that first part of that sentence does connect to real life, is a much stronger concluding sentence than merely stating the theme all over again, which we've heard like 4 times, or summarizing your point, which again, we've heard it multiple times by now too. All right, so that's how you would end your paragraph. So as we look at the whole paragraph, boy, is that well supported, right? And it will be a longer paragraph that you'll write. And it all is all following the formula that you have here. So it would be good to get that in your brain to make sure you follow the formula when you're in the middle of a test. Now, if you want more help, we do have some information at the Revere Writing Lab website, which we'll go to in a moment. There's a section on how to use quotations in the writing section, which I will show you. There's a page on ellipses and brackets that I'll show you in a moment. And then don't forget also that we have the tutoring service available at the Revere Writing Lab. The website does have information on that as well. So let me take you over to the Revere Writing Lab website. So on the home page, if you scroll down, you will see on the left there are the locations of the writing lab, and it changes throughout the school day. So that we have no writing lab first and sixth period, but for example, period 2, let's say you have guiding, guided learning, study hall, or you have a class where you have a sub, or you finish your homework early and you really could use some help with your writing. Well, Mr. Hayes, who teaches AP literature, so he knows his writing, right? He's in room 204 just waiting for kids to show up who want help with writing, or basically anything with English, but especially writing. Or if it's period 3, go to Mrs. Faganelli in room C202. Mrs. Lavati isn't in her room, but she's in the commons area outside of my room, basically, waiting for people to show up. And I have it in my room during 5th period, which is your lunchtime. And I remember many times students would come to me during lunch asking for help or for me to check their rough draft of their paragraphs. I would be happy to work with you. In period 7, it's in room C212 right now with Mr. Suzik. And in the second semester, Mrs. Silviti, who teaches AP language, he has it in room C210. So we are here to help you with your writing. So if you're struggling on the paragraphs coming up or the essays coming up, we are here for you. Now, under the grammar book, under mechanics, you have ellipses, hyphens, dashes, parentheses, and brackets. So this does go over how to do the dots in the middle. So if you think about it, whatever's in between quotes needs to be exactly word for word what the writer wrote. So how do you change a quote? Like how do you shorten it, for example? Well, if you're deleting the middle portion, you would use the 3 dots, and it's with spaces. So it would be field, space, period, space, period, space, period, space, and then the word that. Okay. And then this goes over like, well, what happens if you're doing like 2 different sentences and cutting some stuff out, etc. there. And then at the bottom of the page goes over brackets, because brackets are used when you want to change the wording. So let's say you want to add words, maybe to help the shortened quote fit better. Or in this case, you have pronouns that are kind of confusing, so you want to add a word in there to clarify things. So you would put brackets around those words to say that you added them, they were not in the original. And then also, what if your quote actually has errors in already? Like a usage error like the word there, or a spelling error like kofif. So this is traditional that you would put in brackets the italicized SIC, sick, which simply means that the original quote had the error, not you, which is important for the grader to know. And then lastly, if you wanted more help on how to use quotes well, in the writing section, we don't have much on writing here yet, but under literary analysis, we have a how to use quotations, which will take you through a series of examples of like basically poor context with quotes, what's wrong with it, how to make it better and what's the best way of writing it. And we do that with a couple different examples to help you get a better understanding of how to embed keyword quotes into your writing. So I would encourage you to use those resources as well. All right, so I hope that helped you better understand how to write a quality paragraph. See me for help and any of my other colleagues in the writing lab, and best of luck.